that period on the tacho from 8,000 to 9,000 RPM is just absolutely otherworldly. Now we know this was a trait boasted in the Gen 1 991s as well, and I'm so pleased that this car has held on to it. But then what that Gen 1 car doesn't have is that low down torque. The other thing as well is the power is so linear. It genuinely is so hard to pick a weak spot of this engine. It's blown my mind. Of course, the other difference, which is huge, is this. Not my jazz hand, a manual gear change. We all know the story, it's well versed by now. When the Gen 1 GT3 came out, Andreas Preuninger stood on the Porsche stand at the Geneva Motor Show in 2013, and he said that PDK is the way to go for all GT cars moving forward. It's much better than a manual, it's far more clinical. GT cars are all about performance, and therefore, without any more arguments, it's PDK for the future of these cars. Enthusiasts like you and I were not happy about that, as we know. That Gen 1 GT3 is such a good car, it's just a shame there was no manual option. This is the great thing about Porsche, it shows they listen to their customers, because they tested the water, so they brought the GT4 Cayman out. I think the demand for those cars was far more than I think even Porsche anticipated. So after testing a manual car in the GT3 Gen 1 but shelving that because they decided PDK was the way forward, they hauled the gearbox out, put it into a GT 911, which turned out to be the 911R, which was a manual only special edition. So then Porsche had a problem, because they showed that a manual gearbox does belong in a GT 911 still. So step forward, the 991 Gen 2 GT3. As we know, Porsche then went further with the idea of this manual GT3 and released the touring car. The touring cars are identifiable because they are flat back, there's no fixed rear wing on the car. However, this being a naturally aspirated 500 horsepower rear wheel drive Porsche 911 with a manual gearbox sounds awfully like another car from within the 991 family. Know what car I'm talking about? That one. Yes, now the 991R is a halo car. It's one of my favourite 911s to buy. The question on everybody's lips is, has this car peed on the fireworks of that halo 911R in front? A car that realistically is selling for around £400,000 right now. I think we'd better find out. Yes! Right guys, we don't want that noise. We want the noise of a 500 horsepower naturally aspirated flat six from a 911R. So let's see how this car stacks up against that 4 litre GT3 in front. We're off. Similarities between the car then, and again on paper there are lots. Both utilise the same shell. The R uses the GT3 shell that's 1,852mm maximum width, not including mirrors. The 911R utilises the same spec wheels as the GT3. As I say, they're both 500 horsepower, they're 4 litres, they're naturally aspirated, they have a manual gearbox and of course a mechanical limited slip differential. But I really want to see if there are tangible differences between these two cars. That's going to come down to 3 key areas. Number 1, chassis. Number 2 is of course the engine. Is the engine in the GT3 as good or better than the 911R? And the third factor that I'm going to be looking at today is this manual shifter. Because again, has the GT3 got exactly the same gearbox as the R? In which case, if the engine's better and the chassis is better in the GT3, then it well and truly has watered on the fireworks of the R. Or are there components of the 911R that ensures it's still a special car, a car that sits ultimately above the new GT3? Let's be honest, how many of you are watching this video and hoping I say, do you know what, the manual GT3 is exactly the same as the 911R, therefore the R is heinously overvalued, prices need to come down immediately. Well, I've got to be honest, I've done about 10 miles in this R so far, and already there are a lot, I repeat, a lot of differences. It is much louder in here than the GT3. I expected that, if I'm honest. The R is louder than the Gen 1 RS. A GT3, meanwhile, isn't as hardcore as an RS, so I would always expect this to be louder. Steering is lighter in the R compared to the GT3. It's feather light is how I'd say. The GT3 system isn't heavy by any stretch of imagination. Let's talk about chassis and damping, because I said that is important. It is immediately noticeable to me that the R is softer. The car moves around far more than that GT3 does ahead of me. The GT3 is stiffer by comparison, exactly what you would expect of a race spec car. The R, however, definitely has a road bias to it. There's a bit of roll in the corners. It's quite a rough surface, and the back of the R is kind of skipping around a little bit. Definitely unnerving. The other thing is that gearbox. It's definitely different. On paper, we are told that the 6-speed gearbox in the GT3 has been taken directly from this car, the R. The GT3's gearbox is wonderfully short and snappy across the gate. It is a delight to use. But let me tell you, no question, the R's gearbox is definitely better. It's just smoother. It just snicks through the gate. It's seamless. It's beautiful. The GT3 gearbox, on the other hand, has a bit more of a clunk to it. Ultimately, the shift in this R feels lighter. Are you noticing a pattern here? Everything I'm saying about the R is to do with lightness. That is becoming the overriding theme of this car. Lightness is...
Without question, there's clear daylight between an R and a manual 991 GT3. Yes, the 4-litre flat 6 in the GT3 is superior to that found in the R, offering more torque south of 4,000 RPM and a stronger pull past 8 grand all the way to its 9k redline. But for the road, the R is simply the more exquisite driver's tool, with better throttle response, rifle bolt gear change and wonderfully communicative chassis. However, my test here featured the track-biased manual Club Sport GT3, complete with fixed rear wing and roll cage. Really then, we need a manual with touring pack to decipher if the R specialty is truly retained. So guess what's coming up in part 2?
Oh my god, look at